Jennifer, what advice would you give someone trying to balance their own grief while feeling the responsibility to support grieving family members and or friends?
So I think having that setting up the boundaries is huge, and knowing what your limits are.
Welcome to Aging Vibrantly, Conversations to Empower Seniors, an Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario podcast. I'm Marianne Rideout, the host of the show where we amplify the voices of seniors who impart their expertise and wisdom to enhance our understanding of aging issues and ways to live a safe and fulfilling life with respect and dignity. On this episode of Aging Vibrantly, there is a sensitivity warning as we're covering materials that may bring up some strong emotions for listeners. We're discussing death, loss, and bereavement, and we'll cover topics such as the definitions of grief, caregiver grief, and family dynamics while experiencing grief and loss. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Deborah Sawidge, a member of the podcast Senior Advisory Committee. Deborah is the founder of Age Friendly Consulting and a member of the Wasauksing First Nations and founder of OAKS, Older Adults Knowledge Sharing, and has over 15 years of experience volunteering at elder abuse prevention, including the past chair of the Prevention of Elder Abuse Committee of York Region. Deborah has 30 years of experience in management. She has inspired and bridged many collaborative partnerships, including partnerships with Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. Her vision is to be part of the change, building relationships with respect, trust, and commitment. So thank you, Deborah, for joining me today for this awareness-raising conversation as we're going to have on grief and loss. Most of us have been touched by loss and the lingering grief that follows. Today, we're honored to have our guest, Jennifer McCrae. Jennifer is a credentialed thanatologist, certified loss, grief specialist, and end-of-life doula. As a compassionate end-of-life and grief specialist, she's dedicated to helping individuals and families and workplaces navigate the complexities of grief, loss, and dying. Jennifer specializes in dementia care and infant and pregnancy loss as well. She offers personalized support through workshops, one-to-one sessions, and wellness practices tailored to individuals' journey. Jennifer combines practical support, including communication strategies and coping tools, with holistic techniques such as yoga, breath work, and energy healing to foster peace, resilience during life's most challenging transitions. Welcome, Jennifer and Deborah, as we move forward in having this talk on loss and grief and coping strategies. So, Deborah, maybe you can start our conversation off on this topic today.
Thanks, Rayanne, and welcome, Jennifer, today to the podcast. I'd like to start with how would you define grief, and how does grief manifest differently for individuals?
Well, thank you both for having me, first off. And grief is just a natural response to any type of loss that somebody is feeling. And it may not just be an emotional experience, but it's a very multidimensional process that, integrates our thoughts, our behaviors, our physical health, our relationships. And it's going to manifest differently in each person because everybody is going to experience the event differently. They're going to experience it in their own unique way. And there's going to be various factors. There's a difference in a cultural background, there's a difference of their personality, their history with that person. So it's always going to look different for everybody.
Yeah, I was just going to say, are there differences in ways that men and women grieve? Do they grieve the same, or is it different when they're reaching out for support or counseling?
So it doesn't. I don't believe grief has a gender. There's different grieving techniques that people will use. Different oscillating almost. Some people will. When we're talking about gender with men and women, there is various things how people are raised. It may manifest differently, but on a spiritual level, we're all going to be grieving, and I think we all need to accept how that person is going to express that grief and not put a specific gender type onto it.
Yeah, that's that's a good point. And we all grieve, like you say, different ways and different emotions. And it's everyone has their own way of dealing with that. As we'll get a little bit more into that as we have our conversation. I've heard sometimes of expressions about healthy grieving or complicated grieving. Can you explain some of these terms that we often hear, but maybe not really understand clearly?
Sure. So with healthy grieving, it's a process where individuals will gradually start to integrate their loss into their lives now. So they find, healthy ways to adapt while maintaining connection to that loved one's memory. And it's very fluid. So, I like to say it's like the waves of grief. So, they'll come and go with the waves, but they're very much riding those waves out and embracing everything that they're feeling. They're just going with that ebb and the flow. Complicated grief can occur when somebody feels very stuck in their mourning. They're not able to, I'm going to say, move on and start to experience new experiences. There's a lot of avoidance of, say, anniversaries, things like that. They just don't want to acknowledge anything. They may not even want to acknowledge that that person is gone and still very much living in that moment before they passed. And this can come up from, various things. It could be the result of a sudden loss, expected, maybe a lack of support around that person that they're grieving, or maybe some unresolved trauma from their past, and they're just unable to move forward.
Yeah, because you were just talking about how people experience it, and as you mentioned, it sometimes can be delayed. That maybe it just doesn't happen right away. It takes some time to process until realizing that the person's actually really gone, especially if it's a sudden incident, like maybe you mentioned, let's say a car accident or a stroke, or somehow someone may have passed away, and it may not hit a person till, it could be weeks or whatever later, and sort of having the signs. And how do we as individuals sort of supporting that person around us to look for some of these signs that we may want to help them out furthermore?
I would always try to keep in contact, reaching out, if it is a sudden loss, you mentioned a car accident, and there's always going to be a lot of, what ifs when that happens. If there's investigations that will also then delay it. So making sure that you are still reaching out to that person, and wanting to continuously hear their story. And, hear their questions. You may not have answers for them, but to make sure that you're still there. Or if you feel that you are unable to help them, maybe connect them with someone who specializes in that, and then they'll be able to, touch base and hopefully work them through the issues that they're having.
Great.
Jennifer, as you mentioned earlier, individuals experience grief and loss differently. As a specialist who has worked with many families, what strategies would you recommend for supporting families to maintain open communication and tolerance during these times of grief?
So first thing is to understand that that family dynamic has changed, and the word family has really evolved over the years. So recognizing that now you may have a step family, and then that's going to add additional family members that may need to be in on that conversation, and understanding that each of you had your own unique experience with that person that you are grieving. So, you may all have grown up in the same house, for example, but you each had an individual relationship and an individual experience within that, and honoring that in yourself and in others. So while, you are working through the grieving process, having a good structure. So if you are, want to plan one day, an hour a week, however you want to work it, where everybody can come into one room and leave everything behind. So, turn your cell phones off, and always start, that meeting with, I'm coming at this from love, but this is how I am feeling. And trying to get them to express it, and allow that person to have, whoever is speaking, that is the only person that's speaking. So when I work with families, I use, it's called the talking stone. So whoever has that talking stone is the only one that's allowed to speak, and everybody needs to listen. And, understand, again, you may not like the feelings that this person is feeling, but having them express what it is they're feeling is very important, and being able to validate that. So, creating those safe spaces, and having those regular check-ins with each other, throughout the day, not leaving people out, depending on, where people are. Maybe you're using a WhatsApp chat, or you're, emailing list, or, you're setting up a Google Calendar or something where everybody can stay on track, because a lot of the miscommunication happens when, say, there's a group of 6 and only 2 people are communicating amongst each other, right? So making sure everybody stays in the loop, and really making sure that everybody is validating and understanding that everybody's feelings are legitimate.
Yeah, I would think that
Great
technology's, yeah, Deborah, I was just thinking too that with technology now, it must be a little bit helpful in terms of keeping connected now that we have like FaceTime, and we can do these WhatsApp kind of things and keep people closer together, because people do live so far away from, maybe they're the person or family members, to keep people, better connected, to keep a check-in, even if it's just a couple little, how you doing today kind of thing. At least it's that check-in with everybody, and keeps everyone really connected around and supporting that person in these difficult times. So I never thought about that piece where you talk about technology. I thought, yeah, that actually takes somebody to sort of initiate it and keep that conversation going. I think that's really great. So, Jennifer, when a person we care about who is still alive, and they may be living with a diagnosis and maybe of dementia or ASL, or perhaps they've had a stroke, or maybe palliative, is the grieving process different versus from what we've just talked about? And is this what we call anticipatory grief?
Yes. So this is when the anticipatory grief does start right at that diagnosis, or the stroke. As soon as it happens, you are instantly anticipating what is going to come next. So whether that be, your medical journey, or the changes in your physical home dynamics, that process is starting. But it's very much a continuous journey. It's, if somebody, I'm going to use dementia for example, somebody has a diagnosis of dementia, you are starting to grieve the person that they were, because their personality is starting to change. And you're also then starting to grieve the person that you were. If you are now maybe becoming that primary caregiver, or maybe you are now, that person you're adjusting your schedule to go in and check on them every day. So you're also grieving then not just the person who has this diagnosis, but the person that you were as well. And then the person who has that diagnosis, whether it be whether they've had a stroke or dementia, they are grieving the person that they were before that happened. They have that sense of loss of, if they aren't able to drive anymore. So maybe their driver's license is taken away. That's a loss. And, we need to recognize that. And they also maybe not, as their dementia journey progresses, they may not understand exactly what is happening anymore. So it's that grief it is a very long process, and having the supports in place is very imperative.
I would imagine there's sometimes sense of anger or resentment that why is this happening to me that might come out for people. And it's probably difficult to come to terms with because we know that changes are going to happen based on, the health that will change based on the diagnosis. So I would find that might be, do you spend time when you're talking with families to deal with those kind of issues?
Yes, absolutely. Because then there's also, when somebody does, say, have a stroke, for example, it is very sudden. So then that also brings up that, oh my goodness, now this is, they're starting to face their own immortality. Everybody wants to live forever. We're all immortal until something happens. And then we're like, oh my goodness, now, did I get all of the goals that I wanted to get accomplished? No, I didn't. Am I too far along in my journey to accomplish that? So then that starts a whole other set of feelings, and then we start to really understand that, oh my goodness, I am afraid of dying and I am afraid of this. And my hope in people realizing that fear is that that's going to actually open up that conversation of what do I want my death to look like? And opening up that conversation of, what you would want to happen to you if you weren't able to speak for yourself. So I try to always see that, there's always a positive and a negative side in something. And hopefully when something happens that it starts to open up and people will begin to communicate a little bit more.
It is a difficult conversation because a lot of times people may not be prepared or want to talk about the, things that could happen or might, it's a difficult conversation to have, advanced care planning about preparing, even just getting people to have wills and having conversations with family about what your wishes are can be challenging, and depending on your family and the dynamics there, that also comes into play as well. So, sometimes people may be feeling, I would suspect, maybe lonely in this process if they don't have a supportive person as well. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Because some people, if they have a diagnosis and maybe they are finished with treatment, they don't want to do treatment any longer, and they have come to realize, okay, I'm just going to live my best life for the time that I have here. And then you can have maybe some family members that really try to push them to do something else. And they don't want to have that conversation of, what is going to happen. And that's typically coming out of love as well, right? They always want to, their person to get well. And we always hope for everybody to get well. But having those conversations and being open to having them, and as difficult as they may be, having them maybe not one-on-one, but maybe if you need a third party to be in there to help to facilitate that conversation, to get that flow going, that's always an option for people as well.
Great conversation. It is the key of open communication and the unknown, the fear of the unknown, and what pathways.
And there's different avenues for people to take as well in celebrating that life. And that's what I really focus on when I am talking to people, is to focus on what they're able to do in this time. So, for opening up those conversations, you mentioned, but the advanced care directive. So yes, is that in place? But also, what kind of a legacy would you like to leave? And having those conversations, because if something does happen then tomorrow, everything that you wanted is already in place. And your family can start that grieving process, even though they're grieving your illness throughout, they are going to grieve your death, that they can start that death grieving process, instead of going, well, what if I had done this, or maybe we had done that, or I should have done that. And that's going to delay them starting that grieving process. They have a lot of these questions in their mind. So having the conversations is, it's not easy, but it is very necessary.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Family and friend circles have many dynamics. Jennifer, what advice would you give someone trying to balance their own grief while feeling the responsibility to support grieving family members and or friends?
So I think having that, setting up the boundaries is huge, and knowing what your limits are. We can all say, I can do X amount of things in a day, but is that realistic? Is it realistic to fit all of that into your day? And how long can you do that for? Because consistency, especially with a terminal illness, dementia, consistency is very important. So how long can you continue that plan for? And know that your limits are going to fluctuate day to day. So, what I'm capable of giving and sending my energy to today could look different tomorrow. So honoring that, and setting up, prioritizing self-care. And self-care is going to look totally different for everybody. It could be taking a 5-minute walk, a quick walk around the block. It could be an hour for someone. It could be, calling in a PSW to help so that, you can take a full day off. What does that look like? And being able to be a little bit vulnerable, be able to, say out loud, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry that I'm having to do this. Because when we bottle everything up, it shows, or, it portrays to the other family members that it's okay. He or she has it. We don't need to reach out for help, because they're handling it. They're handling it fine. Or it's, if our children are seeing us not expressing how we're feeling, then when they are feeling the grief, because the children will feel it as well, then they're not sure on how they should be expressing it. So allow yourself to be vulnerable, and to show that is very important.
Yeah, thank
Great
you.
point. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there challenges that, those who are caregiving face as they grieve the loss of a person that they're supporting or caring for? And how do caregivers help manage both that emotional and physical toll of caring for someone who may have dementia while coping with their own grief as well? So they're kind of dealing with both of those kind of emotions. So do you have any suggestions on that, or what the challenges are and how they would deal with that?
Yeah, there's a few challenges, because it's caregivers and PSWs, anybody within that field, they're in it because they really want to help people, and because it's not their family. Again, that name family is changing, but they're with that person. Sometimes only 2 hours a day. It could go up to almost 24 hours a day with that same person. They develop that bond, so they do have they could face that emotional strain. They could get burnt out, feeling isolation. So some ways to combat it is if, the family can also keep them involved, and the family realize that this person is also going to be feeling, grief. They are going to grieve the person as they go. They're going to grieve the death, and really recognize that, this person had that emotional attachment. So, including them in, if there's maybe an end of life celebration, including them in that. And then within the workplaces, if the company can set up a time that the person is allowed to have X amount of time off, maybe allow them to process it, bring in some workplace wellness, allow them to express the grief that they're feeling, because they do take on quite a bit, and they need to be able to release and express that.
Jennifer, a common question that we hear in, whether we're at a visitation or a community or a gathering, or people are conversing with one another, it's a common comment that, they don't mean disrespect, but a family or a friend would share a comment saying, well, they were 90 years old, or they're no longer in pain. They lived a great life because they are now 84. Or another one is, I didn't know what to say. We've been best friends forever, and I didn't know how to express my feelings. Do you have anything you'd like to share on this?
Yeah, when we start to use that, well, at least, or, be grateful for, we're completely undermining what that person is feeling. We're undermining their experience in that moment. And when the griever hears those words, it can be interpreted that, they're just being dismissed, that their feelings aren't valid, and that this person is not a safe person to express their feelings to. So some things that you can say, because it is difficult. Some people just don't know what it is to say. Some things that I suggest people to say is, I'm sorry for your loss. Would you like to talk about it? Would you like to talk about them? Or, another one is, if you would like to share your favorite memory about your person, I'd be honored to hear it.
Nice.
And then, or I went to the grocery store and I grabbed a few items for you. Here you go. Because you're not, some people are not okay with talking about emotions. That's perfectly fine. So that's a practical thing to do. Come and bring the groceries. Here's some ready-made meals. And that is still showing that you care, you are there. And then lastly, sometimes you can just literally say, I have no words. But I can come and sit with you and you can tell me about how you're feeling, or we can just sit in silence. Let's just be here. Sometimes you don't need to say anything. You just need to be there and bear witness to what they're experiencing.
Well said. The pause speaks volumes.
Yes. We're a fixer, right? Humans just want to fix things. We don't need to fix them. They're not broken. We just need to support and acknowledge, validate what it is that they're feeling.
Yes.
Let them know that they're there.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That's a great point. I think we can all learn from that. Just wondering what message you want to leave our listeners with who might be feeling alone in this journey, their grief journey, because, we're talking about family and how that changes. Do you have any suggestions on people who feel alone and not know where to go or how to get help?
There is, absolutely. They can reach out to me. For example, I do have a list of people both online and remote. Some people want online, some people want remote, but to reach out, whether it be to a peer support group, whether it be to a specialist, I always like people to keep in contact as well. So the griever to reach out to friends and family, to constantly keep that, again, the lines of communication open, and reaching out and also getting out into the neighborhood. Sometimes, a little gesture, a little smile to your neighbor, sometimes can help bring a little bit of joy into your life as well. And then you kind of reestablish those connections, and you're not alone. And my message would be is that you are not alone. There are people that can help. We just need to connect you with them.
We always say in a lot of the work that we do that every small action makes a big impact in someone's life. So even just, saying hi, like you say, might be a small gesture, picking up the phone, just to touch base, or offering, going over and offering the baked goods or whatever it might be, that you don't know how that's going to impact someone's feelings and emotions for the day. So we totally agree.
As well, Jennifer, with many of our cultures, we have so much diversity in our cultures as well. It's many members of the community. It's the village that's supporting the individual, the family. And do you have any other added suggestions you'd like to share with our audience?
There is, especially with family being across. I mean, we're so spread out now. There is, there's a lot within your spiritual background. So whether it be a church, whether it be a community center, there is quite a bit within the community, and just reaching out and seeing what is. Every community is going to have something different, but getting out and getting to know your neighbors, getting to know the various people and organizations are very helpful.
Thanks.
Yeah. Are there any actions that you'd like to see change to support individuals who may need time away from work to grieve?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we mentioned a few times that the word or the term family, has definitely evolved over the years. And, with our, our typical ESA right now, you only have X amount of days, depending on, if they are a blood relative. And that is completely changed. We have, various partnerships now. We have sometimes friends, we have exes that, we may need to, we want to be able to grieve them. And, we have friends that sometimes our friends are our family. They're the only people that we have left, but that's not recognized within the workplace. So, going forward, I would love to see workplaces try to integrate some type of a policy that when, somebody has gone through something that, they are allotted some time off, or they are allotted to, have some type of support benefits coming in either into the community, or allow them to connect with someone. Because it is important. We have, we've very much evolved in a lot of other ways within our workplaces. And I think there's room for growth within the grieving.
Yeah, I agree. This has been really insightful, and I know I've been learning more, as we're talking through this, and hopefully our listeners are learning more about how they can get some help and not deal with these difficult issues by themselves, and that there are services and support such as yourself, Jennifer, that can help people. So, we do thank you for your leadership and raising awareness on, grief and loss and bereavement, and being a real leader of change in this area, and for people to learn more about grief. And like you say, it's not something that we want to sort of, we can never prepare enough and have conversations enough about some of these conversations that are very difficult. But it's like you said, if we all know, we're not going to have those leave us with the feelings of the what ifs or what should I, could I, so we have that open dialogue with individuals. So we encourage people to check out Jennifer McCrae's website called soultransitions.ca. It's excellent, has lots of resources. And I think Deborah would just like to ask maybe our last question that we do ask all of our speakers that we invite to our podcast.
So Jennifer, I've had the opportunity of building the relationship and having a great understanding and the passion that you share with what you provide. What advice would you give to empower seniors to age vibrantly?
To live every day to the fullest. Don't be shy, and just get out there and just be your best self, not somebody else's best self, your best self.
Thank you so much. Excellent. And then covering that topic, it's an endless book. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership and raising awareness on grief, loss, and bereavement, and being a leader in the change. And lastly, I'd like the listeners to learn more about grief and check out the website. Once again, as Rayanne had shared, it's got so much knowledge, so much information that you can share with so many of our listeners that they can reach you on the website or email. And in closing, please remember, every person has the right to live with dignity, respect, free from violence, abuse, and most importantly, neglect.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Deborah, for being our co-host for today and sharing your knowledge. And because I know that you've spent many years in this area and worked also in this field of with bereavement and have some knowledge around that with the work that Jennifer is doing. So thank you both. And just a reminder for people that they can find we will put links in our show notes where you can find links to the website as well as the work that Jennifer has been doing as well. Or you can check out our Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario website, which also has a listing of all of our podcasts at eapo.ca. We again, thank you again for both of you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Miigwech.
Before we leave our conversation, remember, whether you are a caregiver, a concerned family member, friend, or professional working with seniors, you can make a positive impact in the lives of older adults. Just know your small actions can make a big difference. To find more information on elder abuse and to find links on grief and loss, please view our show notes. Be sure to check other episodes of our podcast on our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also find resources on elder abuse prevention and protecting the rights and dignity of older adults on our website at eapon.ca. Don't forget, if you like our Aging Vibrantly podcast, the best way to show your support and to help us grow is to like, share, rate our show, and leave us a review. This podcast is made possible by funding through the Government of Canada's New Horizons for Seniors program. Produced and edited by Todd Miller of Podcast Experts with the support of Lisa Woodifield, our project coordinator. Until next time, stay vibrant.